Welcome to Goalie Science, the podcast that bridges the gap between goaltending, science, and peak performance. I'm your host, Jamie Phillips, a former professional goalie, currently pursuing a doctorate in physical therapy and specializing in goalie performance coaching. Joining me as always is Dr. Ben Cernick, a seasoned goalie coach and sports analytics specialist. Whether you find yourself at home, on the road, or at the rink, grab a cup of your favorite beverage and let's drop the puck on this week's episode.
Jamie, did you fight anyone on the internet this week?
Did I fight? I was not on the internet a whole lot this week. I've decided that I'm going to go on the internet a lot less because, well, actually, that's not true. I'm going to go on the internet a lot more, but it's for more of my content. The problem is it's not like I'm looking over the bushes. Like, what are they doing over there? It's just like it pops up in my feed and I watch things and I'm like, well, sometimes this is like a really like actually objectively wrong, and other times it's kind of like I just don't like. I kind of disagree for these reasons. Very rarely is it like, oh, I like that. So I think I'm just gonna stop that. Just gonna answer DMs, try to respond to comments, make my own content. That way, my blood pressure will stay in the normal range.
Normal range.
So I won't be pre-hypertensive.
Yeah, we're health promoting goalie podcast here.
Very health promoting. Did you fight with anyone on the internet today? Not that you usually do, but I'm not on. I won't say it, but I'm not on Twitter. I'm on Twitter. I'm not calling it X.
No.
I know that you sometimes go to war on Twitter.
Have
you gone to war lately?
No, you know what? A lot less than usual.
Good.
I mean, it's kind of not the same place it used to be. It's a lot less active place. Twitter used to be like a very, very good place to get information and learn lots from. And I know that's very nerdy, but everyone, you're listening to the Goalie Science podcast, so you signed up for this.
Yeah, sure.
It's not as great anymore. It's disappointing, some would say, actually.
It's almost like when someone buys it with the thought of buys it as a meme. It's not good for business. I don't want to point fingers.
I would never point fingers. We don't point fingers here.
But it's almost like if you don't care about a product, it doesn't turn out too good and you lose $44 billion quickly. Who would have guessed? Who would have guessed? Not us. Anyways, thanks for joining Goalie Science. Let's get back. Ben is drinking a Starbucks, which means he must have had a lot of coaching today because that's a rich person drink.
It's a $3.50 Americano right now. I'm living life on the edge.
If you are watching on YouTube, so shout out to you guys. This is the last time I'm going to have this plain background because I have spent about 10 hours putting together the background and I hope it looks good. Otherwise, I'm just going to throw it all out and then it's going to suck. But we wanted to do a Q&A. I've actually been stockpiling questions just because I think every couple months we probably do a Q&A. Usually the questions are always the same where it's like, I'm keep getting beat glove. How do I stop it? And it's like, well, that is very nuanced, and we can't answer that.
You should buy a new glove. That's the problem.
You should sponsor the Goalie Science podcast. We actually came up with a pricing structure before this. So if you do own a business and you are interested in sponsoring, we have a pricing structure breakdown we can email to you, and it's very, very affordable. It's actually criminal how affordable it is. But
you want to get some relatively cheap advertising to a very niche community, we appreciate all of you listening. But Jamie, let's get into the questions. I know there's a couple that are gonna. I vetted the questions, so I know what they are. Well, I'm ready. I'm prepared. I'm in.
Okay. So this one, I'm going to kick off with you because you know this one, and you were like, I want that question. Why can't a butterfly count be treated like a pitch count in baseball?
Yeah. So this is something that comes up once in a while. It came up a couple times this week, but it's something that's been floated around in the hockey community for a while. It's something that I've floated around in years past.
I've also floated it around.
Yeah, like we've talked about this in the past before or something. There's a lot of barriers to this. One, just as an idea itself, let alone when you actually get into how you would monitor it appropriately. But I think the first and foremost thing when it comes to comparing butterflies to a pitch count in baseball is that pitch counts are isolated for game settings, right? It's designed for game settings, and it's most applicable for tournament settings in youth baseball. So I played rep baseball growing up as a kid. So how we managed pitch counts was always a pretty significant thing, right? You're like, well, if this pitcher goes over 60 pitches, we can't use him tomorrow. So let's make sure, you know what I mean? That's how pitch count works. It's really, its intent is just to limit repeat bouts of maximal intensity throwing, right? That's the design. We're going to reduce the amount of pitches in a game. Now, pitch counts are not perfect. It does not control for the amount of pitches a pitcher gets in a warm-up. It does not control for any of the pitches a pitcher gets during practice. It only identifies maximal game throwing efforts. All right. So when people talk about a butterfly count, they always go to practice. We should limit butterflies in practice. You can already do that. It's really easy, right? You want your goalies to butterfly less. Make sure your team's practices are better. And you're a parent who has a goalie on the team, just make sure that you're not, again, make sure that you are not doing drills that are 19 shots in a row, right? Like that's one of the things. Like, you know, like I watched a 3-man weave happen this week.
It sounds like a lot of work to, you know, maybe structure practice a little bit better.
Yeah, well, it is harder, right? But like, so again, when we say comparing a butterfly count to a pitch count, right? So now you want to limit butterflies in a game because that's what a pitch count would be, right? Like that's the 1-to-1 comparison. So it also does, and then, so you're not going to do that, first of all, right? You also, unlike a pitch count where you know your pitcher is going to throw a number of pitches, right? It's a little bit harder to plan for in a game. For a goalie, it's like, okay, well, the goalie, you know, gets to their butterfly limit in the first period, you're going to pull them. Like they've done too many butterflies, so you're going to pull them.
I think when most people talk about pitch count, they are referring to like the practice pitch count, which doesn't, you know, you said that doesn't really exist in baseball, in at least youth baseball. I don't know if it exists in Major League. I'm not a baseball guy. I'll be the first to admit it.
No, pitchers have, again, if you want to, we talk about like periodization. So periodization is the planning of training and the planning of events throughout a season. That's what we mean by periodization. You look at professional baseball, they have their routine down to a science, to the point where they fly out. If you're a team that's playing in a different city the next day, they'll fly their starting pitcher out early to get to the next city. Like that's how diligent they are. They're like 4 days out, you're going to throw this many pitches. 3 days out, you're going to do these stretches. 2 days out, you're going to do this. Like that's how detailed they do it with pitchers. And so
I think that, actually, I don't know if hockey will get to that point. It feels like maybe because we're kind of in the thick of it, it does seem like, I guess we're almost, even though none of us are directly conducting any goalie research, it seems like we're trying to like push some, I mean, you are stats wise, but like you're not, but it's stats wise.
That's not true at all. We have just finished collecting goalie research.
True. On what? Which one?
We have training load research on goalies coming out.
Oh, training load. Yeah. But I guess like in terms of like, we're looking at the structure of hips and all that stuff that like baseball.
Oh, we're not doing biomechanics.
Yeah. Like the biomechanics stuff, because like, you know, people don't like stats. Stats don't work.
I don't like biomechanics. So.
Exactly. But I feel like hockey, well, we know hockey is slow to change. So I don't know if that would ever be the case. I think for me, when it comes to like, why is the butterfly count? Why have I changed my opinion on like not doing it? It's because we like every movement as a goalie is kind of bad.
Yeah.
And so it's at that point, it's you're like, well, you need to have some adaptation because you have to be able to withstand those forces. And so you have to be able to control it over time, which is also typically why younger kids skate less and you kind of skate more as you get older. But to compare it as a pitch count would be like, well, it's like you'd have to count every time a pitcher moved their shoulder throughout the day. Like, oh, like every time they ate food, you're like, well, you're flexing your shoulder, and which isn't even the equivalent of like the T-push and stop, which we know from the one paper that we have is worse from the hips, the stopping portion at least, than the butterfly. So do we set up T-pushing rule? Like then it just becomes so outrageously nuanced that in my opinion, it's just like, okay, let's just not skate as much, or let's structure drills that aren't just shot after shot after shot after shot after shot. Let's just do like one quick flow drill and then get into some game-like stuff, or save the repetitive butterflies for a goalie session.
Yeah, and that's exactly my point. Like that's where I come to in this conversation, and that's what and we're going to have a scientifically backed, blog post. So as scientifically backed as those can be, we have a blog post coming up explaining the details of this conversation right here. But that's what it comes down to. It's not that it's not a good idea. It's a fine idea. Like the intention's good behind counting how many actions a goalie's doing. And like, there's reasons to do that from like a workload and training load perspective. But when it comes to like a health and development aspect, it's too complicated and there are simpler solutions, right? The simpler solutions are to do less, right? So in practice, Jimmy, we've talked about this endlessly. I'd say probably 25% of our podcasts have contained this fact. If you're a goalie and your team does lots of flow drills, it is okay to stand on your goal line and actively track every puck without going down in a butterfly. You don't have to butterfly on flow drills, right? You need to watch the puck. You need to track the puck. You need to still make saves, but you don't need to go up and down 50 times in a flow drill.
Yeah. For me, like you said, if you're doing a lot, if majority of your practice is flow, I would agree with that. If the first 5 minutes is flow, for me personally, I would disagree. I would say like, look, you can, try on those shots, get warm, feel good, because that this is the only bit of rapid shots or like more repetitive shots that are less game situational. I think, as we say this, someone watching or someone listening or watching as a goalie might be like, oh, okay, well, we're not giving you the green light to like not try.
Yeah, that's
like,
not it at all.
This is very active and purposeful like practice. And if your coach or your team is one of those ones that has a lot of flow, we would suggest talking to your coach and kind of explaining what you're doing, why you're doing it. And oftentimes if a coach hears that, hopefully, if they're a good coach and good at making drills, they might change a little bit of that structure of the drill, or it gives them, an understanding, okay, there's a reason why you're standing on the goal line, you're not going down every shot, so you don't have to get yelled at or whatever it is. And I think it's a tricky conversation. I got an email from a parent that was explaining basically this situation, and I tried to articulate how tricky it is to have this conversation. But I would say it's important to have that open line of communication between whether you're the goalie or the goalie parent and the coach in terms of the why you're doing things and like that what can be done that's slightly better in a way that doesn't necessarily hinder the player development too, because it's easy to be like, oh, we should just only do power play drills or 2-on-1s or whatever. But it's like, well, what's going to be the best for the players? And then it's kind of like, well, and then that's a whole different discussion.
Well, that's like, again, that's a pretty simple discussion, right? Like,
well, yeah,
I think the answer is, especially at younger ages, there needs to be more isolated skill work. And what I mean by isolated is, I don't mean like, okay, we're going to do, sharp turns around cones. I mean, it's okay to do forwards and D specific drills and having goalies doing specific things. Again, hockey is one of the only sports that doesn't do this actively very well. Go watch a soccer practice, go watch a baseball practice, go watch a football practice, right? All of those sports do position specific drills all the time, right? Hockey's the slow one here. And look, a large part of that is a lot of minor hockey teams don't have regular access to goalie coaching. We know this, right? And that's one of the major limitations is they don't have access to that. Sometimes a team won't have access to coaches who feel comfortable doing skill drills in general. And that's now just, we're back to the commentary on minor hockey.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But that's like something that can be done, right? That would be better. Anyways,
we're actually tying it into what one of the next question was, where they're like, what do you think the problem is? Actually, one of the questions was, do you think there's too many goalie coaches? And but I'll save that for another one. But I can't remember that. I should have wrote these down. I was kind of going off the freestyle at the top of my head.
Brutal.
I know, I'm the worst. But essentially, I was, like Ben said, I think one of the biggest issues in North American goalie development is the lack of consistent goalie coaches in the organization. And that just comes down to money. It's just money, because like, if you think about it, in a perfect world, you have, I don't know, Toronto Marlies or whatever. It's the first one off the top of my head. Toronto Marlies, big organization. If you had one person who was in charge of goalie development and they had other goalie coaches that are qualified working alongside them, that one person oversees that, has a grand plan, a grand structure, and it's implemented and everything can be done in-house. But that would require hiring at least one person to step away from their private training and work exclusively with those goalies, and they'd have to have a salary that matches whatever or exceeds what the incentive is of doing your private training. And so that isn't feasible for most organizations. And if you explained it, there's only 2 goalies on a team. It's not like you're going to have the goalies pay that. You'd have to have the player or the parents of the players pay extra in order to get that goalie training. And I just don't see that being able to fly. The only way that it would work in my mind is if it goes to a more European structure where there's the local towns and communities and cities, they end up putting money, which means tax dollars, into that development. And I just don't, definitely not in the States, but I don't see that. Yeah, no, I don't see that happening. So that is why, or you need a goalie coach to win the lotto and want to do it. Or they have.
Yeah, like, I mean, I feel like you have a unique situation in American hockey where you get to work with consistent goalies throughout an organization, which is, again, that is atypical for
very atypical
for club level hockey in North America, right?
And so I apologize for cutting you off. I'm just saying that it is very atypical where I get to do both so heavily, but I'm doing both so heavily involved in the team side because I want to be a part of that role. Yeah. And I want it to be, this is the trial, the thesis, the whatever, like, let's see if does this work? Like, can over the course of the next 10 to 12 years, can one organization produce a statistically significant amount of junior A, tier 2 junior A to college level goalies? And can I put some data on the table? It's not just a numbers game where it's like, you live in Toronto, there's just so many people, they're going to end up with a lot of good goalies, versus can I take kids in the organization and how many per the organization? So that's why that situation is unique. And I'm very fortunate to be able to kind of like slowly grow that. And as I get more time, it would be more time invested into each of those goalies.
Yeah, that wasn't what I was going with. That was a nice little monologue.
Well, what were you going to go with?
All I was going to say is that it's really challenging in the sense that, like, for an organization to step forward and be able to have that offered for the same, goalie age down, right? Like, I've been fortunate enough to work with a number of organizations that we have contracts with where we do what's called their goalie development. And that doesn't, that's not always a super consistent thing, right? Like, it's where what is able to be offered by organizations top down is probably not equivalent to like the level that you'd expect, right? But and in a perfect world, let's again, on a perfect world, you have 2 goalies on a rep team, right? On your rep team, whatever level you want to call it. You're a goalie coach, you want to be out with them at least 1 hour a week? I'd say that's like probably the minimum.
Absolute minimum.
Right. And that's my point, at the absolute minimum. The way most, and I can only talk about how it's structured out here in my area. So kind of in like Southeast Ontario, most organizations give like an allocation to goaltenders or their teams for a season. Right. And most of the times that gets teams about 10 sessions. Right.
So you get 10 weeks. By the course of a 52-week year.
And but realistically, the season's probably like 26 weeks of the 6 months, right? September through March. So let's call it 26 weeks, right? So you're going to see a goalie on average once every 18 days. And then now it's an hour, but it's 50 minutes because there's a flood. So you know what I mean? Like, it's one of those things. You look at papers about practice time for goaltenders in soccer, for goalkeeper data. And you see these studies for organizations where they're like, on average, each goaltender received 200 minutes of goalkeeper training per week. Goalkeeper specific training, 200 minutes.
It's so funny because I guarantee someone's listening or watching right now and being like, you guys just always talk about Europe. Well, you know what? When it comes to sport and development, they do a better job in a lot of different aspects.
Jamie, how many goalies were drafted in this year's NHL draft? I know you don't know.
You're right. I don't know, but I know that you know.
Yeah, it's 26. Jamie, how many of those came from North America?
6.
It was 10.
Oh, I was like,
Yeah, but it's not good.
no.
Sub 40% from, right? So not only are teams, and this is not any commentary on the quality of goaltending in North America. It is the model that NHL teams are looking at, and we talked about this before. They're seeing what the development pathway looks like for European players, and they know it's a stronger and a safer pathway for them to take a player, especially a goalie.
Yeah. And like, if you're listening right now and you're like, Ben talks to a lot of scouts and a lot of NHL teams, and this is things that have been, Ben is in the know more than he likes to say. So it is very true. And the European model for athletic development, not specifically in hockey, but in almost all sports, in our minds, and kind of as an evidence is showing, it just makes more sense.
Yeah, it's again, like the biggest thing, and this is something, again, and people, again, we talk about Hockey Canada a lot. We think they've done a lot of not great things for what, but they've done a lot, understatement. But they've also, again, made some changes that I think from a scientific approach are really good. And one of the things that they base their approach on is they look at what's been going on in Finland, right? Finland, it's a country of sub 5 million people. And look at the product of professional Finnish hockey players. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Right? Like the ratio of how many people play hockey in Finland, to how many people there are in Finland, to how many people go on to play professional hockey in North America from Finland is massive. They do this amazing job. And so it's hard to not look at the models and the way that they do things and say, okay, well, what can we learn from that? Because it'd be silly not to, right? And that's one of the big things. And we talked about this before. If people can go back and listen to Jamie did an interview with one of his goalies at Michigan Tech, Max Varanen. Am I pronouncing that right?
I believe so.
Oh, nice. It's a great interview. If you haven't listened to it, go back and check it out. It's from the summer. And there's a lot of insight to understand about the Finnish system and how different it is. And so it's never going to be that way in North America. It's never going to happen. We're too deep into it right now. But it's important to acknowledge that they have more science, they have more research, they have better results. And so there's stuff to be learned from them.
That's actually a good point. So there's when I coached over in Finland, and hopefully I get to go back again because it was just an incredible experience. I learned a lot from a lot of other coaches. I'm going to reach out to some of those coaches and have them on the pod and pick their brains, because we have one that is the head guy for a Finnish elite team. And then we have another one who coaches in the minor system, not really the minor system, but more the youth system. And to hear the stories of development, but the biggest takeaway for me in that is a lot of collaboration. And then it is it's a lot of volunteers of qualified people. So again, we're not going to go into the socioeconomic differences between those countries that make it easier
politics
for people to be able to give up their time versus living in North America, where it's more difficult to give up your free time unless you have a better situation than others. That does play a massive role. But I'm gonna flip the page, and I'm going to
hold on.
Oh, sorry, continue.
We're gonna take our break right here.
Okay.
So everyone, please enjoy the next 30 seconds here. You can listen to the ads, but you also don't have to. Jamie, see on the other side of this one.
And if you want to sponsor this ad, you just let us know.
Jamie, we're back from our ad break. Thank you, everyone. Got to pay the bills. That's the way it is.
You do.
Unfortunately,
I don't. We're not doing a good job of that.
No, that's okay. Okay, let's hop back in. Let's hop back and do it enough.
Yeah, that's good.
This is a question, and it's an interesting question. I don't fully know where it's going to go, but I've had some people ask you this, and some people have asked me this as well. Something that we talk about regularly. Are there too many goalie coaches right now?
I actually get asked this quite a bit, and so I have had a little bit of time to stew on this one. The answer is no. in terms of objectively, are there too many goalie coaches? No, I don't think so. I think there are a lot of, we just talked about how so many teams need goalie coaches to be involved and there's not enough time. So that we answered that question earlier. I do think that the barrier to entry is too low and not, I don't want to, I want to phrase this in like a correct way.
Be careful.
I wish, again, when you look at the European model of coaching, oftentimes in a lot of countries, there are specific degrees in coaching. And if you want to work with high level athletes, you need to go through the rigmarole of one, education, and the time spent working with young kids and working your way up. Now you might be listening and be like, well, Jamie, you just hopped right into coaching Division I. And I would agree. That's a very, very good point. I mean, I did coach from the time I was like 15, out on ice for lessons. So like, I would also disagree with that. But I think that when it comes to the barrier to entry is I wish that there was some sort of, there was actually like a good, almost certification across the board that had some consistent message. So I guess Hockey Canada has theirs. I know they have some, and I know I've heard from various people it's not great. Same with USA Hockey.
Whoa.
No, I've heard many things from many people, but I've heard that USA Hockey's is not that good.
I've heard many things that Hockey Canada should answer my emails and let me do their certification. Moving on.
Yes. Anyways, and also USA Hockey too. But I think should you reach out to me? But I think a lot of it just like a lot of basic things that, or I guess things that we would think basic because we do have like kind of ridiculous, way too overqualified for a lot of things, sort of. I wish there was a course that talked about a lot of science background and the understanding, and then the coaching application. Like how do you coach? How do you communicate? Like what are the important things? There should be a little bit of biomechanics, like goalie biomechanics, like understanding how does the body actually work. It's one thing to be like, just do this, but you have to understand, like, why should you do this? Well, what are the pros and cons of doing this? Is there a better way? Is this the best way? So like a lot of that, I think, would help a lot. But no, I don't think there's too many goalie coaches. I guess, is that possible if there ever would be one? Maybe. Ultimately, the cream really rises in these situations.
Yep.
Look at in anything in life, whether it's like personal trainers or whatever, like the best people will always be the best. And there's going to be a reason they're going to produce the best goalies. They're going to have the best rapport and people will continuously go to them. But I do think in terms of the basic understanding of all the very wide umbrella that comes into sports performance, and we're just not just saying goalie coaching, because goalie coaching is sports performance. That whole umbrella, I think there needs to be some sort of better way that all coaches need to take that. And then if they want to go and do their own thing after that, they can do whatever they want, but they at least everyone has all been educated on the same basic principles and then go from there. So that's my opinion. But to answer the main question, no, there isn't too many goalie coaches. Ben, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I agree. So like I did this past summer, I went through like the Hockey Canada coaching for goaltending. So again, like people probably know this, there's no, like you can just be a goalie coach. Like there's nothing you need to do, right? You can just,
there's no training. Like if you go to work at Tim Hortons, like you have to go and like learn and like the basics of it. You can just start coaching.
Yeah. And like, obviously probably people who do that probably have a background in it. And
yeah.
Understand some of it, but you can just start coaching, right? But I did kind of the first parts of the Hockey Canada coaching. And when I did the course, it was like the first one ever offered by the GTHL. So like the Greater Toronto Hockey League. And it was great to see the amount of people in the room. I think there was about 20 of us that day. I think I was the only one who was like actually working as a goalie coach who was in that room. So I thought that was pretty cool. Like there's lots of people who were a lot of people were like, yeah, I'm an assistant coach for a U13A team. And I really just want to be able to help support our goalies a little bit more. That's why I'm here.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that a lot.
I was amazed by that. Like I was so impressed. And I think, and again, so like this course, like $50, not expensive. Like Hockey Canada, and it's only a few hours. So it's a couple classroom hours and an hour on the ice. And it really is a pretty basic introduction to the position. It's probably something where I think in a perfect world, it's like a full day. Because I think the amount of time it was run on was probably short for people to get the most out of it. There's just so much that goes into it, right? And this is what we always talk about, is that it's probably a week-long thing if you want to learn to actually, like, if you want to start becoming a goalie coach and you've never done goalie training, you've never seen anything before, you probably need to go shadow some goalie training. You probably need to do a lot more to start your entry into it, right? It's really hard to become a goalie coach and feel confident. I know that I work with some really great young coaches, ones who are just kind of either finishing up their junior careers and are done playing, or people who are still playing and want to get in coaching in their early 20s. And these are great coaches and great kids who have started, who have been trained and have been doing goalie coaching as goalies themselves. So they've been a part of being taught and goalie coaching. And, when they transition to first learning how to coach, they have tons of hurdles they got to get over when they first start. They have tons they need to learn, right? There'll be goalies who have been doing drills for 10 years. And then when they're put on the spot to think of how to coach that goalie in front of them, they're like, oh my goodness, what do I do? How do I do this?
So like a mentorship is, if you think about like any sort of actual career, I guess goalie coaching is an actual career for a lot of people, and it is for ours. But I would say
for me a little bit right now.
Stereotypical career, so like a healthcare or anything, you have to have a certain amount of shadowing hours. Don't get me started on unpaid shadowing hours, but you have to have so many of those hours, and it is important to build those reps. So it is, if you can work alongside or under someone for some time, I think that offers like a lot of value, especially if you're just starting off. And then actually, I'm gonna quick little tie in one of the questions. What's my biggest pet peeves? And we've talked about before, is when a coach says, do this because that's how I used to do it, or like when their argument is that's how I played for this many years. That doesn't mean anything. I look at that and I actually just, you want to talk about me throwing my phone against the wall? That's what makes me throw my phone against the wall. But just because you played doesn't mean you can coach. And it's very, very important. And I think coaching is a skill. Some people are going to be naturally really good at it. And for other people, you're going to have to continue to like learn and grow. And for me, like, I wasn't naturally good at coaching. Continuously learn and trial and effort. And every single day, there's something new that I'm learning and tweaking. And it's really important. So I forgot where I was going. Oh, a mentorship. Yeah. So like having a mentor to learn after and to be able to correct you and to give you feedback is important, because if you are the only coach, if you are your own business, your own entity, you have to be self-reflective, and it's very hard unless you're recording all your sessions and watching yourself back and coaching yourself. And it's really difficult to coach yourself in anything, or let alone coaching. So to have a mentor to be able to be there to assist you, I think that's like a really important thing. So it's almost like if I had to put a suggestion on top of that, some sort of certification course, there would be like, you have to shadow so many hours from a Hockey Canada or USA Hockey certified coach. And then that coach has to be like, yeah, thumbs up. But also that wouldn't work either, because we look at the private spectrum, the private goalie world. And then it's like, well, I don't want that competition, so I'd never give him the thumbs up. So
it's messy.
All in all, we should all just beat Europe.
Yeah, like I think the biggest thing I'll say about this is that I think we need more goalies, more community involvement, more coaches on teams trying to learn about goaltending. Like I said, I was so impressed by the number of people who had gone out of their way to sign up for that Hockey Canada goalie skills coach, that first step in that process, right? I don't think it's enough time, and I don't think that's Hockey Canada's fault. I don't think that's anyone's fault. I think it's just pragmatic. Like, it's something you just need some ideas. And there's a Hockey Canada drills app they provide you with, and so like there's good resources there. It's just like all things, time is a resource, and so it's trying to get going there.
I actually have a solution for we talked about before. The organization has a head of goalie development who oversees other coaches. And so that mentorship time, so you have, you say you live in wherever, you're in Oshawa. So let's just say the Oshawa Generals and the Oshawa Junior Generals are all part of the same thing. So the goalie coach of the Oshawa Generals is in charge of development through there. All the other goalie coaches, whether they're contracted or however it works, they oversee it. Those that want to be new to the goalie coaching, they go on the ice and they watch how the guy coaches the OHL team. And then they get their practice with like the U10s, and it builds from there. Again, more of a European model, but I think that's in my mind that's a good solution to the issue. Expensive, not even an expensive one. The organization would have to want to do it.
Yeah, I think I think some kind of person in the organizational level being responsible for overseeing that, I think is a good solution. However, implementation's hard. Also, this is the last year of the Oshawa Junior Generals, Jamie. No more.
Really? What?
Oshawa Clarington's amalgamating. Officially announced on Friday, the North Shore Whitecaps.
Ooh, I like that name. I think that's cool. So
colors too.
So Clarington Toros.
Yep, gone.
No longer.
No more.
No longer AAA.
Clarington gone. Oshawa gone. Central Ontario gone. I think North Central's gone as well.
So
Richmond Hill folded last year. We're losing hockey teams.
So 4 teams are becoming 1 or 2?
Central's just gone.
Okay.
All their people are being reassigned to different places, and then Oshawa and Clarington's folded together.
This would be a good topic for another episode, especially if we can get someone in from like Ontario hockey, because a lot of large cities, Hamilton, for example, is almost 1 million people, went from 2 AAA teams to 1.
Yep.
And so is the quality of that product going to be really good? A team going to be really good? Oh, probably. It's hard not to be. You just take the best players from 2 teams and put on 1 team. But what does that mean for the other half of kids? So that's really interesting. We should get someone on because I'm curious about that.
Got some takes on that. We'll save them for later. Jim, we got one more question to get through.
Okay.
I want to actually get through. This might be our longest episode ever. What was the question? You had it.
Yeah, but now I kind of forgot. I got it.
Good radio right here.
Yeah, great radio here. Nothing like some good dead air and some umps. Our goalie's too robotic. I think this is said by every ex-goalie in their 50s who played high school hockey in my comments. Our goalie's too robotic. Ben, are they too robotic?
I had a conversation this morning with a junior goalie today. Good goalie, really talented, really skilled goalie. And it was, my exact words were, blocking is dead. No one blocks anymore. Blocking is a dead art. Don't use it.
Wait, he said that?
I said this.
Oh,
no,
you said that?
He didn't say this. No. No. It was like the drill we were doing was a little like pop out simulation, almost like a down low to mid, where it's like you get into your post, pop out for the in tight quick hit. And classic, beat him under the hand on shot 1 and then beat him over the shoulder on shot 2.
Love it.
The little razzle dazzle. But all it was is because his hands were back, right? He wasn't attacking. He wasn't smothering the puck in tight. Mm-hmm. And I think that is the number one thing, and this is going to be maybe silly to say, the number one thing that to me says that goalies are not robotic. You watch how skillfully goalies play in tight sequences with their hands, their shoulder positioning, their pads. It is remarkable. You want to see robots? Look at J.S. Giguère from 2004. That was butterfly block. He was together
though.
Yeah. Stanley, never forget he had a 980 save percentage in a playoff series.
You're gonna get, he lost the Stanley Cup and won the Conn Smythe. Crazy.
Doesn't matter. 980 save percentage in a playoff series, letting 1 goal in 4 games, or 2 goals in 4 games or something. It was crazy. But the point is, like, go watch goalies play stuff in tight. Go watch Jake Ottinger. Go watch Joseph Wall. Go watch UC Saros. Please watch them play in tight sequences. Please watch their hands.
Yeah. I like to call that, the smothering.
Robots.
Yeah, the smothering. I think that blocking, blocking is dead. It's more of an active block. So rather than letting the puck hit you, which was the old style of blocking that was successful for many years, it's you are now it's kind of ridiculous to explain because it's basically the explanation of how do you make a save, but it's getting yourself in position to get hit.
Yep.
Versus Yeah, so it's a complete oxymoron, an active block, complete oxymoron. But that's what it is. And then along the lines of that is, are goalies too robotic? I actually would say yes, goalies are robotic, but not in a negative connotation. They're robotic because it's been established as the most efficient way to stop the puck.
Yeah.
There's a reason that goalies go down in every shot. Like we've talked about many times, made many Instagram videos of this. There's a reason that goalies play a similar style, and the Hassicks and those styles die out because, or there are extreme outliers who, for whatever reason, have these things. But even Hassick had a pretty solid butterfly fundamental. The rebounds he just rolled around.
He just did barrel roll 2-pad stacks, and people were using like the original silver synergy. They couldn't lift the puck.
Yeah, it's good stick though. And so it's regressed to the mean. So all the goalies play a similar style because that is the most efficient. You look at basically like everything in every sport, everything kind of becomes a little similar until something better comes along, and then people adapt it. And that's just, if we look at like what's coming along that's better, I would say that more Russian style of goaltending seems to be working very well. And it's for like, but you have to be like a very niche outlier type of athlete to be able to play that style. But will that catch on? I don't know. But the butterfly goalies are robotic in a good way because we figured out how to be pretty good. Consistent.
Yes, right. Yeah, I have like two things to add there. The first one is, have you noticed that every single new car looks the same now? Like every single car company has the same SUV crossover. They're identical, right? That's because when someone finds the most efficient and optimized way to play within a specified rules or regulation set, this is what happens. You get similar products, right? So every SUV and crossover looks the same because they have emissions requirements, they have aerodynamics that they need to follow, they have the amount of space that customers want, right?
Yes.
That's kind of the same thing with goaltending is, well, we have rules of the game of hockey that currently exist. So we have the trapezoid, you can't cover the puck outside the crease without a piece of your body kind of near it. Like there's all these rules of how you need to play. And then there's equipment regulations. Like you add that all together, and so you get how people maximize or optimize how they play within the requirements that they're set out to. So that's my analogy. The second thing, and it kind of goes back to what I think people say when they see things are robotic. I think what happens is we see, and this one, I actually really don't like this term, but I know what people say, like goalie school goalies, where they're excellent drill goalies. And then like a single shot happens in a game and their brain explodes and just like the shots from the top of the circle start flying in from everywhere. I think what happens there is that's just the differentiating factor between like really good goalies who are going to make it to the higher levels and just pretty good goalies, right? Like this idea of a goalie school goalie, I think that's the wrong definition of it. I think that's someone who is trained and might be at kind of the best they're going to be. Right. I don't think it's fair to say that like, had that person not been drilled and dialed in so much that they'd be better. Right. I think that's actually heading down the wrong direction. I think what's happening is because we've raised the floor so high in goaltending, and that really happened through the early mid 2000s into what we see now in modern goaltending. I think we've raised the floor of the quality so much now that the bare minimum is so much higher than it used to be. That now when like goalies are getting beaten, you're like, well, how did he get beat there? He looks like he's in the right spot. He moves so well. Yes, because that's the minimum floor now. You have to be able to do that. Then you have to add the next things that make you stand out. That excellent puck tracking, that excellent puck tracking. The excellent skating, the excellent decision making. All that stuff that then layers on to make goalies elite from, junior level or AAA level, who takes them to the next level. So that goalie school goalies, there's nothing wrong with that. That person's just playing to their abilities, right? Do I think training can be improved? Absolutely.
Yeah, I was gonna say that. I think that's both a differentiating factor between goalies that are like have quote unquote here have potential versus those that don't, and a combination of the quality of coaching. But sometimes you can't coach that out of somebody.
Yeah.
And so then you have to understand, like, okay, like if you're just doing drills and you're not providing coaching, then you're probably going to end up, more likely you're going to end up with goalie school goalies versus some of this that's a coach that's teaching and communicating, articulating, understanding. But you also might not.
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, well, yes, but I do think that a lot of that comes down to some athletes just get it. And it's actually, this is really, it's funny because I was listening to, like Ben and I both like enjoy weightlifting. I was listening to, there's a big company out there called Weightlifting House. I was listening to their podcast. And one of the things they were talking about was the sport of weightlifting and how it's one of the only sports that, or Olympic caliber sports, that the average fan of the sport also participates in heavily. Like if you and I watch the NFL, like, okay, we play flag football every now and then, maybe once every 7 years.
Yeah.
But we're not going out and we're not playing football. Whereas in like weightlifting, you go out and you weight lift, which is exactly what they do. And you train. And the point I was getting at is the fans or just the general enthusiast is doing a similar amount of training as the best in the world. We're not going to talk about performance and drugs, but there's a reason that people are just better.
Oh yeah.
And those people are always going to be better. So even if you just do drills with no instruction, you're going to have a percentage of goalies who are going to just be better and better in games. And our job as coaches is to try to make that as small as possible, to even the playing field, to build upon those that are naturally better and build upon those that need the extra attention and the extra understanding. And then ultimately the cream again will rise. And so I think it's really important that genetics and like just the it factor really is there for some athletes, and that's just the way life and athletics are.
Yeah. So like, I'm really fortunate. I get to work with Dr. Joe Baker and Dr. Nick Wadier, who are two people who I get to work with in the academic setting. And for those people who don't know who those are, they're some of the bigger, if not biggest names in the field of talent identification and athlete selection. And it's something that they both say all the time. So something that I get to hear every week is that sometimes it doesn't matter how hard you work. Like, you are limited by your genetics, you are limited by your environment. Those are realities, right? So it's not fair to say if you work hard, you can achieve anything. That's not true. If you work hard, you're more likely to achieve things. Yes, please continue working hard. You need to work hard.
Because you also don't you don't know what you can and can't achieve until you get there.
Right. And so like, and again, this is a pretty good example, it's me sitting right here with you, right? So Jamie's a year older than me. For people who somehow maybe don't know this, Jamie and I trained together every summer and during the winter since we were like 13 or 14.
Basically every Saturday and Wednesday.
For between like ages, 13, 14, and 21, 22. Right?
Like 8 or 9 years.
Yeah. And so, and then summers, and this is not just on ice, this was off ice workouts, lots of stuff together, right? And I always tell people the story, maybe not on air, but there was just this 1 year. I'd come back from my first year at prep school. Jamie had just finished his
second year AAA?
No, this is junior. This is when you were playing junior.
So did my first or second year at junior.
Yeah, exactly. And so like I've been going off, and Jamie was going off to maybe play out in the BCHL, and it was that summer. And I just turned to my dad one day and I was like, Dad, I don't know what happened. He's just so much better than I am. Like, it was just like one of those things where it's like, I was always trying to play keep up with you. And that's normal for training partners, right? Someone's a little older, a little bit big. Like, again, you're trying to play keep up with the older goalies. But it was just like one day, it was just like, okay, wow, it's not close anymore. Right. And we did pretty similar amounts of training our whole life.
And you started playing goalie long before I did.
Yeah. Yeah. And exactly.
A few years. And so again, like, it's just one of those ones where I look at it and I do try to explain the overall development, and I can't put a finger on it. It's a multitude of factors.
Of course it is.
But a lot of it too is like, I always felt like I was behind the 8 ball because I started late. Mm-hmm. So I'd always compare myself to you. And comparison is the thief of joy. So there's a reason probably why even now to this day, I don't feel that rewarding when I do successful things because I'm always like, well, what's next? What's next? What's next? But my whole life, it's like, okay, what can I do? So it's a grind and grind and grind. And even when I got to the point where like I passed you and others in potential and actual skill, it's like it didn't stop. And so it's just one of those things where it's like, how can I teach that to a kid? I can't.
Yeah.
And my parents didn't teach me that. I just wanted it.
Yeah. Right. And so like, yeah. And again, that's the thing, right? So you're right. Yes. Good coaching helps, right?
Great coaching. Yeah. We had excellent coaching.
Good coaching. Yeah.
Biggest advantage. Yeah.
Yeah. So good coaching helps, right? Genetics helps. The team you play on and the teams you play against, that competition, that helps, right? There's so many different pieces that it's always going to be hard to pinpoint something. And so again, this started with the conversation around like a goalie school goalie, right? It's because for a lot of coaches, and this is not saying anything bad about their coaches, it's about how do we quickly get goalies to that same base level? How do we quickly get them to like that minimum threshold that everyone else is getting to, right? And I think, again, sometimes we will go, I say we as a collective goalie coaches, but I think sometimes that rushes people away from thinking and understanding into just doing, right? And we've talked a lot about that the past few weeks, Jamie, is that, this need to understand what's going on, because if you try to understand the why behind goaltending when you're 17 or 18, it's a little bit too late.
Yeah.
Right. You need to get there early. And so, yes, good coaching and good teaching can help that. But goalies aren't that. It's the roboticism, and what people see is, again, it's the combination of efficiency. It's the combination of what's the reality of how do you get training and where do you find training, right? I think all those pieces that in, right? Again, we talk about this. If you're in a community where there's one goalie coach and they coach blocking, that's the style they coach, right? That's like what you're going to be able to learn.
Yeah. Right. And someone's going to be better at blocking than someone else.
Yeah. Right. And I mean, that's the other thing too. One day I looked over and Jamie's 6'4" and I was like, wait a second, my mom's 5'1". I don't have a chance.
Yeah. I don't know how that happened. Actually, my dad's not. My dad was like 6'1".
Jamie, your dad's 6'2".
No, he probably used to be. He's definitely shrunk significantly at his old age. My
mom's taller than my dad.
My mom's like 5'5".
That's not true. You're making this stuff up.
She's not tall. My mom's not that tall.
All right, we're getting the tape measure out at Christmas. But needless to say, Jamie, like this is a kind of our far tangent here. But yeah, this roboticism thing, yes, goalies all look similar because butterflies are good and butterfly slides are good, and even that darn RVH is good.
So I love it.
I love it.
A couple RVH videos in the pipeline for my Instagram today, if I ever get around to editing them. Talking about our boy, Joseph Wool, stemming from the conversation that you and Derek had in our group chat when I was sleeping and I woke up and I was like, I missed it. I don't know what's going on. Please send me clips.
I got one last thing before we wrap up and before we hit our usual things. I'm at my junior hockey game, my junior team's game last night. So shout out to my goalie, Andrew Claughton, 43 of 44 last night. He was fantastic. Good night. Really, really good night. He was excellent. We've been working on a lot of overlap stuff and he is just like taken off with it running, like so good. Anyways, last night, wide net drive towards the net, and the guy steps out, kind of like he beats the D wide, kind of comes towards the underside of the circle and then kind of cuts along the goal line. And I don't know why this happened, but Andrew stays on his feet against the post. So he is standing up. And the guy goes bar down over his shoulder as he's standing up.
Could have just RVH'd.
And it was, look, shout out to this guy. It was a nice shot. It was in tight. He just popped it up. And I just was so confused. And all I could think about was you in that moment. I was like, if that was an RVH, I could just feel your phone vibrating. Like random people in Uxbridge, Ontario sending you text messages being like, you just missed this RVH short side goal. He stood up. So Jamie, I leave you with this. Is standing up bad too?
I think we should just never be in our stance.
Yeah, he wasn't. He was standing pretty much straight up, shoulder to the post.
Yeah, you're not. Oh God, being a goalie coach is just so crazy. I wish It's just not black and white, and that just
Well-
is what it is. But this might be our longest ever running podcast. We went for a long time today, but we had a lot to talk about. We had actually about 20 more questions that we just didn't get to because we took too long. So we'll have to save them for another one. But if you do have questions, email Ben and not me, and then we'll have to answer them. But thanks for listening, watching. For those that we are in the top 5 in your Spotify Wrapped,
Thank you.
thank you. If you don't have Spotify and you have Apple or things, thank you as well. I don't know if they do Wrapped. I'm a Spotify guy. And for those, a few people that watch on YouTube with us on silent, but just in the background for the algorithm,
Incredible stuff.
incredible. We love that. Thank you guys so much.
Jamie, I was thinking about this one more thing. Sorry. I know we're running late.
No.
I know this is a long one, but people, thank you so much for listening. I was just thinking, if I wanted to get more premium content from you, what should I do?
You should subscribe to my Patreon or just come and skate. One or the other. Come to Grand Rapids and skate or subscribe to my Patreon. Patreon's probably a little bit easier, a lot less travel. Lots of good content on there. There's this week, when you watch this will come on Tuesday the 6th.
You're really bad at time. It's
Horrible. I know, that's the 5th. Yeah, it's the 5th. There's going to be a lot of good stuff on the Patreon pipeline today and over Christmas. So go give it a subscribe. I appreciate the heck out of that. Continues to make good quality. If you want to sponsor the podcast, sponsor a single episode, you just reach out to one of us and we'd love to get that going because it just keeps the whole thing running.
And for those watching on YouTube, everyone, and for those listening, say thank you to my brother who got me a new mic for Christmas, early Christmas present. So shout out to my brother Alex for being an overall great guy and contributing to the podcast. The first sponsor Summer Thing.
You know what, actually, Alex, did you guys talk about the most interesting fun fact about Alex and his wife?
That they're both Alex.
So Ben's brother Alex married his wife. An Alex. So Alex Cernick, Mr. and Miss, literally Mr. Alex Cernick and Mrs. Alex Cernick.
That's correct. And they're just wonderful people. So if you're in Indiana, go say hi to them. I'm sure there's only like 4 people there. Yeah.
Why don't you come and visit and then stop by? Because GR's on the way.
And that's talking geography with the Goalie Performance Club.
All right. Well, thanks for listening, watching, everyone. We do truly, truly appreciate it. And we'll talk to everyone next week.
Until next time.